look, big thank you for everyone coming along this morning. I know I'm always sensitive. This time it is a bit of a rush to kind of get deals in before Christmas or do the books or any of those kind of things. So taking time out this time of year, I know is a pressure for something like this. All I haven't said that, we're in tier 3. Where else are we going to go? Even the pubs aren't open. So good morning. My name is Simon Ryan, and I'm a Locating Kent's investment director. So it's the role of my team and I to create jobs. So we do this in 2 main ways: by supporting businesses and attracting businesses to move to Kent and Medway, and then when they're here, to help them to grow. I think my whole team and everyone in Locating Kent is really conscious of how important our role is right now. And we've been working really hard to support enterprises of all sizes and all sectors over the last few months to recalibrate how to grow in a post-COVID world. And one of the ways we've achieved this is with our program called Future Forward. So this morning, I'm joined by some colleagues that delivered our expertise through the Future Forward program, and they covered things like selling more, delivering smarter, managing your finances better, and getting the most from your teams. And I'm going to introduce them in turn as we go through. But to set the scene for today's discussion, I want to be clear that we're here to support businesses to be resilient and to adapt to the new normality that we're all working in now. Because we know that businesses that are resilient, that are agile, will continue to grow, and they'll create wealth and they'll create more jobs. We're also aware that the skills that are going to be required in 2021 are going to be different to those that worked in 2019, especially leadership and management skills. So we've all learned how to pivot our organizations and develop new capabilities to meet 2 new types of demand through channels that might be new to us, like online. And that's going to be an ongoing process. But we must manage in different ways. For some of us, this might mean we no longer meet our teams in the same place for long periods. It's no longer necessary for every business to have everyone based together all the time. We've decoupled people from place, and technology has recreated the effects of agglomeration. What does that mean? It means that Kent businesses have a real opportunity to thrive in a post-COVID world if they adapt to these new working practices and changes in consumer demand. We want to have more IP-led businesses in Kent, businesses that can operate out of Kent and travel easily to London, nationally or internationally, to do business while taking advantage of living and working at a lower cost base in a great place like Kent. So no more long commutes, no more overcrowded trains only going in one direction. So Future Focus is our support for doing that. And it's a supported business planning process, in effect. So, and a business plan, and this is the kind of definition we've worked to, it means about setting a date in the future, 12 months, 18 months, 36 months, and then assigning measurable financial targets to that point in time for your business, and then setting out your plan on how you're going to get there. So it's not an academic or theoretical exercise. It's not about some business specialists kind of spouting off some theory. It's about helping you make informed choices and taking practical steps to take your business forward in spite of all of the change that's going on around you. So before I ask my colleagues to get involved in all this, because it's not just me talking, I want to set out the plan for the session. So, and the session really is about you being engaged in this and telling us how we can help you build on your success. We want to stimulate your enthusiasm for your business and support you to shift from what's been survival in 2020 to growth in 2021. It's not just about the amount you can sell. It's also more importantly about the kind of business you become, how you use technology, how you reinforce your future resilience. Because be sure, COVID won't be the last big change we face. We know what's coming in Kent in January. Kent will probably be in the front line of Brexit. We've got to work with that, and we've got to continue to work with whatever comes next. Your business needs to be healthy and inspiring, not just flexibly commercial too. So we need entrepreneurs that create enterprises that can adapt. So don't think this session is about you sitting back drinking coffee while some people drone on with PowerPoint. Don't check your emails while it's going on. It's an active session. We really want you to engage. We want you to network. We want to stimulate growth in our business community, just as if we were meeting face to face. Think of, and if you're in your pajamas, that's perfectly okay as well. Think of this session as you stumbling into me and my team sitting in the coffee shop, and you overhear some of the things we say and thinking, actually, I've got something to say about this. Get it in the chat box. Anita's going to stop me if I'm rambling. I'll stop my contributors if they're rambling, and we'll get to your points and we'll get to your questions. Okay. So Anita's here to make sure that you get engaged as well. So we're going to start with what our colleagues think. And like I said, we've got an HR professional, a process guru, a marketeer, but I'm going to start with two fabulous accountants. So some of you will be familiar with Wilkins Kennedy. They've just rebranded as Assets, global accounting business, big practice in Kent, big practice in London, but global practice. So some really good insight. Creston Reeves, award-winning Creston Reeves, just won an amazing award last night. I'm sure Tim will slip that in when we talk to him as well. And Creston Reeves, again, has a global reach through their network. So we've got two firms here working with businesses, not just in Kent, but businesses like yours around the world. And, you know, it's interesting that a lot of the challenges we're going to have to face in January are very similar to some of the challenges that other businesses face throughout the world. Okay, so morning, Tim. Morning, Hayley.
Morning, Simon.
Is Hayley with us?
Hey there, morning.
Hey, Hayley. So Hayley's from Assets, Hayley Kingsnorth, and Tim Levy from Creston Reeves. So, Tim, let's start with you. So, surely when you hit a major bump in a road like we did in the spring, all that really matters is just cut your costs as much as you can and collect as much cash as you can.
Well, yeah, that is important, Simon, but I think you very well know that you're only half right on that. So I think in March, a lot of businesses went into a shock phase for that first period. But what we've drawn attention to on our webinars is the symbol you see in front of you, which clearly isn't in English. This is a Chinese symbol, and it's a Chinese symbol for crisis. And it's actually in two parts. So if you draw a line down the middle, it is actually two separate symbols. The one on the left signifies danger. So this is where a lot of businesses were in the first 3 months of the crisis. They were preserving cash. They were making sure that their costs were right. So they were looking at their cost critically. So that's one element of it. But after 3 months, people then started looking a bit more expansively. And even in the first 3 months, people were looking for opportunities, which is what the right-hand side of the Chinese symbol represents. So this is where people were looking around, looking for opportunities, seeing what was going on, realizing they needed to pivot. Right, I've got a source of alcohol, let's make some hand sanitizer. And that is always a function of crisis and recessions, that you have to look for the opportunities as well. Someone very wise pointed out to me that more business changes hands in a recession than in normal circumstances. So there's plenty of opportunities out there for people to actually grow their business through something like this. So Simon, is it okay if I go on and talk about my example? Which,
yeah, well, I just want to just before you do, Tim, because I'm keen you bring it in, because I love the firm you're going to talk about, but I want to check in with Hayley and just say, hey, because Hayley, you like Tim, you were one of our kind of practitioners in this, and I'm just curious if you could describe for people the process that you went through for Future Forward when you did your consultancy session, and also so if there's any kind of insights you picked up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be very happy to talk about what we've covered in the process. The first point really was to get the businesses to reflect on where they are now, what's happened in the past 6 to 12 months with the business, Some of them were in a very different place pre-COVID to where they were sort of past, you know, once you've got into the first few months of COVID, and they had a really difficult time, some businesses, in trying to work out what they actually wanted to be doing in the future. So we were assessing the trading position, the current position, the financial position of where they are now. Going forward, we then talked about where improvements in processes could be made. So to increase cash, to gain efficiencies in the business, this reviewing internal systems, looking at credit control, looking at the accounting software options even. And then moving on to revisiting and refocusing where the future was for that business, because some things have really changed for some businesses, and their business model, business plan of 2019 is looking very different to what it would look like now. We're reviewing KPIs, key performance indicators. Have they got some? Are they changing? Looking at margins for different lines of businesses. And what I actually thought was wonderful during the process, many business owners worked out that they were actually spending all of their time working on a less profitable product or service, and yet in an area that they perhaps hadn't had time to focus on, had the potential to generate a much higher margin. So it gave that refocus on what the future business strategy and the financial strategy element would look like.
Awesome. So, so Tim, give us an example.
So SGS Energy, heating engineers who had changed a few years ago, realised renewable energy was the way to go. So they put in solar panels, and they do heat pumps, either ground heat pumps or from air. So I see this morning, gas boilers are a bad thing. People are trying to stop me doing gas boilers. So what SGS Energy are doing, they're coming up with the alternatives. Very nice business, growing at a steady rate, but still vulnerable. Because when we looked at what we call a portfolio analysis, what are you doing at the moment? They were focusing very much on one-off jobs. So someone phones them up, I need some new energy source. They go and install it, shake hands, collect the money, go away. So you're continually having to find your next leads all the time. And what the owner, Jonathan, now realised was that he needed to move to what in our box is to the right-hand side. And there was a huge opportunity in all these installations that they've been doing of actually tying up a maintenance contract at the end of it as well. And getting an engineer just to pop in once a year, make sure everything was going okay, replace a few parts which looked like they were going to be falling out. That makes a much more stable business if you've got a recurring income and not relying on the one-off things. And also we were getting him to think about, he's very innovative. There's probably lots of R&D opportunities, and he wasn't thinking about R&D tax credits for any of the work that he was doing. He wasn't thinking about spending some of the time now to invest in the products that he was going to be marketing and selling in the future. So he was trapped in one element and needed to move around. Once you get past that, then, okay, we're growing fast, how do we maintain that? Now, they were doing a lot of the right things in that when they got an order, they were getting some money up front to cover the materials which they were going to go away and order from their suppliers. When they turned up to do the installation, there was a payment before the installation started, and there was one at the end. So as a business grows, that kind of working capital management is really important to be getting the cash up front. A lot of people are frightened of asking for cash up front, and actually shouldn't be, because they find, I mean, it's a very good test of commitment if a potential customer is going to pay you money up front. What he'd found, and what we tripped across all the way through the session, was that as he'd grown, his business hadn't really grown with it. His systems and structures hadn't grown with it. So he was using a accounting software called Cashflow, which I raised my eyebrows as soon as I heard it, because it just wasn't going to be sustainable for the kind of business that he was going to run. QBO and Xero are two good choices for his size of business, will keep him running for a long time. And we found with Xero that there's lots of add-ons. So when he's thinking of going and visiting customers on a maintenance visit, There's software where you can just hand over your phone, get the client to sign to say, yes, you've done the visit, bill gets raised, payment gets taken, all kinds of things which you couldn't possibly do with cash flow, which you can do with these new software practices which are going along. And also, you need to be checking who your advisors are as well, because your advisors need to grow with you. And fast-growing companies, I mean, we sponsor Mega Growth as well. We find a lot of companies whose advisors haven't kept up with the way that the company is growing, and they need to check who their advisors were and just make sure they've got the right ones around them. And he hadn't really come across KPIs. We introduced him to KPIs. And for me, there's two types. There's lagging KPIs, where you're looking very historically at something. And there are these which we recommend people look at, which is leading KPIs. So they're the things that you look at now, which give you a guide as to where your business is going in future. Customer satisfaction is a good one, because that drives future business to you. The current order book is another good one as well. Some of them aren't financial, but there are leading KPIs. Employee satisfaction is a good one. If your employees are happy now, they're going to help you through the future as well. So they were the key things coming out of SG Energy for me.
So Tim, so hang on, just because what I'm thinking, because I think I love the SGS business, and I've met Jonathan a few times, and I like the DNA of the business as well. I think it's quite energetic, and I think it's growth. But I think that there's a kind of big lesson around. You know, there's a quote where Henry Ford said, "If I'd asked my customers what they wanted, it would have been a faster horse." And you know, while he was investing in building factories to make cars, people were still investing in horse-drawn technology and what have you. And of course, you know, we all know now, over 100 years later, where that ended. And we kind of reflect on that and go, oh yeah, of course. And, you know, nice historical story. But of course, with the way technology and the way that certain issues that are affecting us all, like climate change, are happening, this is now real. You know, that lesson of Henry Ford is now very real, that things can become obsolete. And I'm sure this will come up in Christine's marketing talk as well. But there's a bigger lesson here, isn't there, for SGS to learn about managing growth in that ongoing world of turmoil.
Absolutely, which I think was why he signed up for the program in the first place, that he could see he'd grown fast. He knew that there was more opportunities out there. They were working pretty much flat out. Knew that he had to stand back and review everything and make sure everything was going to be in place, ready for the next step up. So it was a good move for him to join the program.
So there are other lessons on businesses that are growing?
So next slide, please, Anita. So the interesting thing again about SGS for me was they were actually in what we call black holes. So they've grown to 700,000 turnover. And there are businesses, plenty of businesses I come across between about 700,000 and 1.2 million, which get stuck. They get to a certain size, it kind of gets maybe comfortable for them, and it takes a lot of effort actually to pull yourself out of this black hole. So this isn't theory, this is based from practical examples of people who get stuck there. And what we found is to pull yourself out of the black hole, you have actually got to do a full, complete review of the whole system. You can go through it incrementally and say, right, I need to tighten up my sales, done that. I need to look at my products and services, done that. But it's very much better to do it as one operation and then plan the whole thing together. You'll get out of the black hole much faster than if you just try and do it incrementally. So again, I could see that left to his own devices, Jonathan might have taken that step-by-step approach. That's probably how he's got 700,000. But really, I think he's done the right thing by coming and looking at all the things which we're going to cover this morning, and have one plan which he needs to put in place in one go.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. Good insight. And Hayley, you've got an example too, have you?
Yes, I have. Actually had the pleasure of meeting the directors of Docker Brew Limited, and they'd recently split the business into two separate companies. So one of them makes and sells high-end bread products and the other is a brewery. The process came actually at an opportune time for the directors, because we were actually able to look at how the accounting software they use, which was currently Xero, could be used to its full reporting functionality, because they actually hadn't had any advice over how it could be used more than just recording the data. From this, we could decipher the optimum production levels for each product line, review the gross margin, assist with budgeting and cash flow analysis. The knowledge of this actually will help the directors to future-proof the business, because they were very much at a future-proofing phase, and it will help future growth enormously, and to steer the financial strategy into the direction that is most profitable for the business. For them, actually they realised that the brewery business was more scalable. So we looked into opportunities how to invest in, perhaps got some machinery, for example, their own canning machine. If they purchased their own canning machine, they became that much more scalable, and then they could produce more and more and more, which obviously would help future growth. Obviously, then we looked into the different investment options, there's grants available, and how we could help them with that. So yeah, it was a really good conversation.
Cool. Now look, the question everyone's asking, what's the beer like, Hayley?
Well, I've ordered some online. It hasn't arrived yet, but I've only just ordered it yesterday. So it's very interesting. Some of the names were quite entertaining as well. So you can tell they're locally based, and they look brilliant. So great Christmas gifts, but I don't get any commission for them.
No, it's damn lockdown. It's like, surely the joys of my job, pre-March, was I get to go and visit companies, and so one of my favourite visits was Fudge Kitchen. So and I came over with this very generously gave me this little sample that I took home to my wife, and she's badgered me about it ever since. So but kind of makes it easy for special occasions, what to buy. So excellent, Hayley. That's really useful. And look, just on you talked about Xero, and Tim talked about Xero as well. Accountants seem to have a little love affair with Xero, and I've got to say, personally, I think it's a great tool. I do my wife's got her own business. I do her books for her, and bank reconciliation using Xero, and she uses Starling Bank. It's just it's a dream, So, but other than and I appreciate there are other tools to Xero, but why accountants seem to really push businesses to kind of modernize their software now. Why is that?
Well, the main reason is because businesses need to react quickly now. You can't just sit and wait for your accountant to talk to you 9 months after your year ends to tell you how much profit you've made. You have to be making quick decisions, and in order to do that, you need data at the tip of your fingers. And Xero, as I say, other software is available, but actually Xero is very much a business owner focused software, so you don't have to be an accountant to understand how to use it. And I think that's what's great about it. It's really not meant for designed for accountants. It's not got all the jargon in it, and yeah, it's really good in order for companies and businesses to use. They're on the go, they've got their phone, they're in a restaurant, they can take a picture, upload it, they can see what their bank looks like, they can see who owes them money, they can send invoices directly to their customers. Everything's instant, and it just takes out all of that additional time and delay in finding out how the business is actually doing. So that's why we like it.
Excellent, thank you. Now, look, Christine, let's talk about marketing, because it's great having all the finance under control and you're managing your growth, like Tim said, and Hayley's suggested. But look, as businesses grow, they have pressure on cash flow, which means they've got to keep growing. So, really, are you going to worry about a marketing plan when everything was going to hell in a handcart like it was in the spring?
Well, yes, but before I answer that, I think you've got to be clear on what marketing is to start with. So marketing is not just what you see, the website, the social media, the SEO, the advertising. No, these are just communication and engagement channels and tactics. But these tactics, without a strategy, they may give you some results, but it will feel very hard to continue to grow revenues when demand slows down or suddenly disappears, as it did for everybody during lockdown. A marketing strategy relies on knowing and understanding your customers really well so that you can develop solutions around them. That makes pivoting or adapting to changing market conditions a lot easier. So,
okay.
We know COVID has been a big shock for everybody, but some companies have really adapted really well. So we know some of our future forward companies actually tweak their products and services to meet very specific customer needs. So we had a catering company that grew very successfully during COVID. They changed what they were doing, but they were offering restaurant quality food, specifically targeting people who would have normally gone out to restaurants to celebrate a birthday or special occasions. We know companies that tweak their pricing and their payment terms to make to put buyers at ease before they committed to the purchase. So loads of retailers, for example, extended their return periods or their trial periods. Some companies changed where they were selling goods to customers with the shops shut. And e-commerce, as we all know, has grown tremendously during the period, and that's across all sectors, and not just consumer goods either. Loads of industrial goods are being sold online now. And also we had to change the way we communicate and we engage with customers, especially true for B2B companies who rely quite heavily on in-person B2B BD meetings. And just had to offer virtual alternatives to that, whether it's how-to videos, self-guided demos, or even webinars. So there's been an explosion, as we know, of online sessions. So one thing is that throwing more budgets to your marketing, your social media, your advertising is not always the best thing to do. There are other options that you can deploy, but the best starting point is always knowing your customers, why they buy from you, what they love about you, and where the friction is, so that you can do something about that.
Okay. And that was the future forward process for you, was it? Start with know your customer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Each session was a bit different, but actually we started with the business model, because knowing how the business generates money now is really important. The growth levers will be slightly different if you have repeat business than if you have than if you haven't, than if you're a project one-off type business. But all customers are not made equal. It's interesting that Hayley and Tim mentioned it as well. We've found a lot of customers where spending their time working with companies spending their time with customers that are difficult to serve and maybe not so profitable. So we started the conversations with there, and then talked about the ideal customers, but not just in terms of demographics, but also what they're looking for when they buy the products and services. What's the value of the product and services to those customers? What would they do if you didn't exist? What are the alternatives that they will be looking for? We talked about brand awareness as well in the chosen markets. So do customers even know about you? Do they know you exist? Do they know what you're about? And what their sentiment against for you? Do they like you? Do they not like you? And also the size of the market is important. Is there headroom to grow in that market, or are you already the market leader and there's little leverage? And from then on, we could look at the growth levers. So for most companies, they think you need more leads, but sometimes that's not the right solution either. Sometimes upselling and cross-selling is the right way to go. Reducing churn can also have an impact. Increasing prices, adding distribution channels, like many did with their e-commerce, for example, are other ways to grow the business. And from there, we just crunched the numbers a little bit, reversed engineer the funnel, and that was really a useful exercise, because that really provides some targets to hit and to stay focused, to grow, to achieve the target revenue.
Sorry, Kristen, can you just explain it? Because I've never had my funnel reverse engineered. What does that mean?
So it's it looks like a funnel, but so to get one customer at the bottom, at the bottom of your funnel, if you like. Obviously, it depends on your business model, but assuming you've got repeat business, to get your revenue target at the bottom, you'll take into account the repeat business that you're getting for your business year on year. You kind of assume that if you do nothing, maybe 90% of that, assuming your churn is looking okay, will come back anyway. So to get your incremental, you need to generate new leads or find that way to increase. To increase that revenue, and assuming that's coming from new leads, to get from a lead to a paying customer is not, one lead, one customer. Is usually, to get one new customer is probably about 90 leads that you need, because you'll lose customers at every stage of that funnel.
Okay.
So some will not be in the right frame of mind to buy at that time. Some will find that the price is not right. Some of them will find an alternative along the way that suits them better. So you really need to kind of figure out what are your conversion rates at every stage of that sales funnel, and figure out what to get one customer, how many leads do I need at the top of that funnel.
Cool. So can you think of can you give me an example of one of the firms you work with and that kind of nailed this process with you?
Yeah, so I've enjoyed a lot of great conversations, but one that sticks to mind is a Cornelius Creative. So they're a product design and marketing startup. And through our conversations, we realized that their business model was not sustainable. So they were targeting the wrong type of customers. They were working mostly through Fiverr with cash poor entrepreneurs who wanted a lot of work for very little cash and on a project basis. So we spent some time discussing their ideal client and the value of what Cornelius Creative brings to these clients, which is really a flexible outsourced solution for market-leading firms in the consumer goods sector with no R&D specialists or small marketing teams. And this model kind of really lends itself to a retained business model rather than a quick and dirty CGI assets, for example, that they create for their customers. And it also lends itself to higher pricing to what they were charging, because the alternative to those clients is to employ a full-time member of staff that they either don't need or they can't afford at that time. So having done that, we realized one different type of customer, a retained business model, increase the pricing, and from there on we just reverse engineered the funnel, so then you knew exactly how many leads they needed to generate to hit their target revenue. And that was really, really useful. So having that clarity on the target audience and also on the effort that the marketing needed to generate was really good.
Excellent. And look, just before we start talking about delivery then, so your opening slide had a picture of Louis Vuitton on the front with a queue outside. Is this a subtle hint for Christmas presents, or is that a reflection on brand?
Both.
Okay. Good luck. So Mark, so we've got our finance in place. Kristin's helped us to figure out exactly where our target market is. She's reversed our funnel. We know the KPIs now to win new clients. I'm a bit of a strong believer that successful businesses deliver well. So what's next then for delivering? What did you address in the future for business planning process to help increase profitability?
Well, exactly. You hit the nail on the head there, Simon, because obviously the finance framework is important, and having the marketing and having the orders. You don't have a business unless you've got orders and a good marketing strategy. But for me, it's actually the operations side is where the money's made, where the business makes the money. So it was really quite interesting to understand from the companies I was working with. There was 4 things I was trying to understand. Firstly, what are the operational problems that the businesses are facing? What are the unique problems for them? How are they measuring productivity? Not all firms measure productivity, so that's a good start. Importantly, how some of the future forward businesses were involving their teams in continuous improvement. So if you want to be productive, if you want to be beat the competition, you've got to be as efficient as you can. So how are you engaging the team to improve your business? And the last bit was really to understand about how resilient supply chains are, because obviously not all firms have to buy lots of materials, but understanding the sort of how well they're sort of procuring their materials. And I think looking at the process side, I think what we found was that there's a lot of firms don't fully appreciate the digital tools that are out there. So there's lots of really good. If you go back one, please, Anita. Sorry. There's some really good digital tools out there. Trello, Monday Planner, great for project management. You've got Miro and Mural, which are really good for collaboration. HubSpot for managing the CRM, and Zero has already been mentioned. So, giving companies an insight into the digital tools out there was quite important. And next slide, please, Anita.
Hang on, just before you go on, Mark, because there's two things I just want to kind of pull out. People clearly important, and but we don't. Fortunately, we've got Rebecca in a second. She's our people expert, so we won't dwell on that one for now. But just talk to me about digitization. Because you talked about productivity. Most businesses don't measure productivity, and look, in my simple way, I always just think productivity is doing more with the same, or the same with less. But how important is digitization to that productivity conundrum?
Well, I think a lot of us have been forced into being smarter and using the online software because of the COVID situation. And virtual working, if you're working virtually, how are you going to connect up with your team from a process point of view? You can't, to collaborate and to sort of exchange information, you have to have digitized processes. So I think there's so many businesses that I've seen have just sort of kicked off using this online software, and much of it is free to begin with. But yeah, that has to be part of the solution. Otherwise, you're not sort of optimizing what you have. So I think it's a really key and important part.
Yeah, and I think one of all of the shared experiences of lockdown is we've all been watching police dramas on Netflix, and I've got to say the one I'm hooked on at the moment is The Bridge, which I know is about 10 years old, but I love a little Scandinavian drama. And what I was reflecting on is, at the centre of all these detective things is they stick up all the pictures on the wall and start drawing lines and saying, how are these people connected and all the rest of it. And I think, well, how would they do that in lockdown? And because our offices have these kind of things like whiteboards where we all go along and add something, or we write if we're out the office that week, or we might have an ideas board where we stick post-its. How do you do that in this virtual world?
Well, exactly, Simon. I'd say if there's one takeaway I'd recommend anyone who's sort of listening in on this session is, after this session, if you're not familiar with Miro and Mural, go online and have a play with it. It's not difficult. It's very user friendly, and you're absolutely right. Engaging with your team in process improvement, in generating ideas and exchange, and sort of understanding where you are. So just sort of daily team meetings where you can see, how we're tracking our operational activity. Those tools, Miro and Mural, are designed for that virtual collaboration and managing the team. So yeah, very, very important.
Cool, excellent.
Next slide, please, Anita. Yes, sort of following on from that, this is a metaphor really of a pressure vessel that, basically it's our processes. Over time, our processes become more complex. We have sort of sticky plasters on them. We try and improve them, and processes degrade. And where we go to the doctors for a health check to see how we're doing, we very rarely actually look at our processes and give our processes a health check. So, the business environment is changing, as we just said. The importance of managing a virtual team and having more digital and online solutions is absolutely essential. So the method that I've recommended to many businesses is value stream mapping. Get the team together, either virtually or in a room, both work, map the current state process, understand all the issues with the current state process, set a vision for your future process, again, map that out using this virtual software, and then have an implementation plan to introduce that new process. Next slide, please, Anita. Yeah, and one final thing which I've worked on with a couple of teams, and have to say, after 15 years in consultancy, this is probably the most effective tool that I've used, and I'd recommend anyone does this with their team. So it's called Niggles and Nuggets. So you can do this virtually or in a room with a flip chart. So engaging your team in improvement activity is the most important thing you can do to improve your processes. So give your team 2 red post-its and 2 green post-its and say, okay, write down what's your biggest niggle, what's the biggest challenge, what's your biggest frustration in day-to-day work. That's the niggle. And the same for the nuggets. What's really working well, what are we most proud of, what are we really good at? And then encourage your team just to share that information as a group and use the niggles to prioritize and target your process improvement activity. And trust me, your team are going to be fully on board to make those improvements and make it happen, because you've actually involved them and asked them. Who, people at the coalface know what needs to be improved. So I just encourage you to do that going forward.
Excellent. And if you're going to do it online, because you've got to do it virtually.
Absolutely, yeah. I think Mural and Miro, great tools to use online, really easy. It is a great way to start experimenting with those tools. Excellent.
Thanks, Mark. Now, Rebecca, I think everyone's stolen your thunder a little bit, because Tim talked about important KPI is staff contentment. Mark's talked about involving your team in continuous improvement. So is that your job done?
Well, actually, the way that this process has gone, I'm at the end of it, and it's actually worked out being really beneficial, because all of that is put in place before people get to me. So they've had chance to look at all of that, and then I can help them really home in on how to put the foundations in.
So it hasn't just been then each session you've done, all people have wanted to ask you about is furlough?
No, which I did think was going to happen, but no.
Cool.
That barely came up.
So there's still people hiring?
There are, and I think that's been really surprising, actually. A lot of the companies that we've been working with have seen growth, so they have had to recruit, and the recruitment has been kind of challenging, more so than you would think.
Okay, well, talk us through your process then. What did you go through on Future Forward?
So the process was, first of all, we started off with something very similar to Mark's Niggles and Nuggets. It's a simple gap analysis, really, to sort of look at what's working with people and what isn't. And then we moved into looking at recruitment, because there's quite a difficult situation around recruitment at the moment in terms of recruiting the right talent. You'd think that there would be a labour market that was really buoyant, but actually people are in a holding pattern right now because of furlough, and they're not moving on to new jobs, and they're just sort of like in stasis. And I think what that's resulted in is there not being as many quality candidates out there as there would have been previously. So during that phase of the chat, we spoke about values and developing those so that they're outwardly facing to attract new talent, as well as inwardly facing to keep those that you have got and who are working remotely on track with your values and your culture, because those things can start to fragment when you're not all based in an office together. Then we looked at growth and contraction, and going back to what Christine was talking about in reverse engineering the funnel, there was an element in all of our conversations about reverse engineering recruitment, not just getting to the point where you then desperately need someone, but looking at your growth and planning strategically. Okay, if we're going to have X number of new clients by December, that's going to give us X capacity, of which we're going to need X amount of staff, and then rolling back from that to think at least 2 months in advance about how you're going to plan that recruitment in.
Cool.
And then,
okay, now look, before you go on and talk about your last point in your example, I just want to say to everyone, we've had 5 experts now, and Rebecca hasn't quite finished yet, and they've all told you how easy it is. So marketing's easy, finance, it's all very easy to fix, and clearly it's not, because you're running a business in a crazy world at the same time. So in a couple of minutes, we're going to open it up and give you a chance. So if you can start banging in your questions now, or your observations, or anything you think that's fab, or anything you think where we may have missed the mark, or whatever, start banging it in now. Okay, so just put it in the chat box, and Anita's going to get them all ready for us all to chat about. And if it's a particular question to one of our contributors, then just say, look, I'd like to ask Mark this, or I'd like to ask Christine this. Okay. Sorry, Rebecca. So you've got a final point, and then you were going to talk about the Foundry.
yes. So the final point that we looked at is literally honing in on those values and making sure that well-being is still prioritised, because the balance of, you know, getting things right when we're working remotely is to still consider people in the context of, you know, their well-being and how they're doing. And those things very often can slip off the radar. Regular time with someone to, you know, just talk about them, but also talk about their performance and all the KPIs that we spoke about earlier. Without that dedicated time, I think it's really, it's not easy to know what's going on with people individually and to have the bigger picture as a big business owner.
Yeah. Now, do you know what? I'm the generation where my first office job was everyone had an ashtray on the desk, but we shared one computer between 12. So well-being wasn't something we talked about much back in the last century. But it's really top of the agenda now, isn't it?
Now more than ever. And I think a lot of people think that it's something that sits over here separately and it's a nice to have, but actually it's a must have, and it underpins every aspect of your business. It underpins how your staff relate to your customers, how they relate back to you in turn. And I do think that people tend to think that it's a bit of a non-measurable, but actually if you put simple things in place that companies probably have in place already, like one-to-one time, like giving clear targets, people don't always line that up as being well-being, but it absolutely is. People need certainty right now, particularly, and kind of like knowing that they're doing a good job and knowing what they're supposed to be doing, even though they're not in the same room as you, is absolutely essential.
Awesome. Okay. So tell us about the Foundry.
So the Foundry was the first company that I went through the process with, and they were just a really good example of somebody thinking that they didn't need necessarily the call part and the people part of the call, because they didn't have a large team, they weren't planning on taking a lot of staff on, but what it actually acted as was consolidation to sort of remind them of all the excellent practice that they did have in place, so that they could bring it sort of together and make sure that everybody was on the same page. And then when they do start recruiting again, they'd be cutting a lot of the time out of that process by making sure that they were taking on the right people who lined up with their existing culture.
Cool. Excellent. And if there's one takeaway you want to share?
I think being last actually is not a bad thing.
Okay. Cool. All right. So I've got another thing here about getting the balance right. That's what you just said, wasn't it? So
well-being and profit, you know,
yeah.
and just making sure that you've got that in balance.
Awesome. Okay. So look, Anita, you still with me?
Yes, I am. There is a question in the chat, Simon. It was actually early on for Tim from Christopher around the analogy on black holes, but obviously what is the investment requirement from the firm to do that holistic review? You know, time, effort, cost, you know, must take a lot of effort to get out of that black hole, I suppose.
Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm happy. Well, this is explaining the whole process, isn't it? It's the fact that four of us each spent, 90 minutes. So the Foundry were local to me. I was able to sit face to face with a guy, which was really good. Otherwise, we're doing this in these types of environments. So it's 90 minutes per session. There's some preparation to do beforehand. There's some follow-up to do afterwards as well. So there's a lot of thinking that goes around, but really it's 90 minutes. And I think the charge from locating Kent in doing all of this?
Not a sausage. So actually, Tim, that's a good point, because I should have perhaps shared some statistics. So we had something like 100 inquiries to get onto the program. We didn't have unlimited resources, so we selected 35 to go onto the program. 2 had to drop out. 25 will be finished in the next week or 2. So they've either finished already or they'll be finished by Christmas. And I think there's about 8 that will be finished in January. So that's going to be about 33 businesses that are going to have a completely new business plan with deadlines and targets to work on. And I don't want to sound like a sales pitch, but we're going to take another cohort in January for this, if you're interested to get involved. it's on paper it's a 12-hour commitment. So the number of meetings that you'll have with our experts adds up to around 12 hours. But in reality, you're going to probably do 3 times that much work yourself in preparing for the meeting and collating your thoughts afterwards and setting your action plan. So over the period of maybe 13, 14, 15 weeks, you're going to put in about 35, 36 hours. So I guess that's something like 2 hours a week to get your business plan to where it wants to be. And I don't want to kind of sound like a broken record, because of course we all get together regularly to review how the process is working, where we're at, who needs extra help, who needs some extra time and stuff. The business plan, and this is where I kind of bang on to my colleagues, is about setting a point in time and setting the actions to get there. It's not a document you just put on the shelf. Anita, have we got anything else?
Yep. Another question from Marcos. And this might be for Mark. Can anyone recommend any business KPIs apps for monthly reports, reviews for all areas of the business, finance, sales, marketing, etc.? Any good go-to tools, I think, for reviewing your KPIs?
Did you say apps?
Apps, yeah. I mean, other tools, if there's not an app that does all that, it sounds quite a lot in an app.
No, I mean, that's a really good question, actually. And I think there probably are tools out there that you can have. I have to see, Christy's got a hand up, or someone else can help me. Go ahead.
Yeah, if it's for reporting of the KPIs, Tableau is a pretty good tool to use.
Tableau.
It's paid for, but Tableau and Clipfolio.
And as far as the HR wellbeing, engagement and etc., if you look at Breathe HR, that's very good.
And if I can add as well, so I've got a very clunky Excel thing which I developed some years ago, which I wouldn't send to anyone really. The only thing I'd say is that you should have no more than 5 KPIs overall. If you've got more than 5 KPIs, well, they're not key performance indicators.
Agreed.
You really need to be focusing on the most important ones first of all and track those.
Excellent, Tim. And look, crikey, so much expertise all in one little place, all just popping out of your laptop. So yeah, so look, one of the outcomes of Future Forward is that at the back of the document, the business plan that we work through, we create a KPI kind of tracker of all of the actions that you've agreed to throughout the period. So obviously you'll have you might have 5 finance actions, 5 marketing actions, 5, you've got a lot of things that you'll need then to work on to get to that point. And there's a tracker in the document, and we've kind of designed it so that every month when you have your management meeting with, or if you're a slightly smaller business where you have those hour or two where you go, right, I'm going to print off my results and I'm going to sit down with a cup of coffee and I'm going to think about this month and reflect on what happened and what I've got to do next. Next to it, you've got those set of actions. So you're going, okay, so my turnover grew 10% month on month. That's great. But we're looking to do that every single month to the end of the year so that we get to, to that kind of growth. What have I done, my actions that are meant to get me to where I want to be that I agreed at the start of the period? So that's that. Nita, have we got any more?
No more in there, but if we've got a couple of minutes left, if there's any more, I'm going to flick to the next slide with the sign-up details for 2021.
Cool. Okay. So like I said, there we are. So oh, sorry.
One more in from Gavin, hopefully. Are there any free of charge help advice available for community interest companies or social enterprises in Kent?
Yeah, so look, if your community interest company is looking to hire people on full-time contracts, then yes, we could put you through the process. Sadly, we're not funded to support not-for-profits unless they're planning to recruit and hire people. So so you can qualify for the process if you've got at least one employee at the moment and you're planning to hire more permanent contract people. on full-time contracts?
I think I might point you towards the Growth Hub, which is allied to Kent Chamber of Commerce. I think if there's anything that's going on in that area, then they will tend to know about it.
Absolutely, Tim.
And just one for me, Simon, I'm going to flick to the next page, which has the sign up link for the 2021 programme. That's not available anywhere else other than on this webinar.
Excellent. Thanks, Anita. So look, Gav's questions prompted me on a couple of other things to think about. So all the local authorities are, if they haven't announced, will be announcing shortly about emergency grants for the post-COVID period. If that's something your business requires or would value, now's the time to contact your local authority, and you need to look for the economic development team. They are the people that will be working on those grants now. There are some ERDF, so European Regional Development Fund grants available for growth that we can signpost you to, that are normally based on, if you're going to be investing money in your business, that you can get a percentage of it back as a cash grant once you've made the investment. So and we go through that on the program. So when you join the Future Forward program, you'll be appointed a business developer in my team, and they will help you work through the process and help you fill in your business plan so that you've got it at the end. They'll help you review it at the end. They'll schedule ongoing reviews. They'll make sure you get the best out of working with these teams. And Future Forward 2021 is open to book for now. Give yourself a Christmas present and sign up for it, and we'll be starting that around the middle of January next year. Okay, so I've got to thank all my contributors on this, because not only have they given up this morning to do this, they obviously gave up time to prepare for it and practice it with me, and imagine it's a challenge getting everyone's diaries together for that. So everyone's been really brilliant at that, and I've got to thank them for all their help since July, because we've been running this program since July, and they've done a sterling job. And I've loved catching up with some of the businesses that have been through this and just saying, how's it going? And they've all just gone, absolutely amazing. I didn't think about marketing that way. I talked to one business that, for example, had spent hour and a half with Kristen, and the business owner said to me, I thought she was just going to bang on about Instagram. And she said she has, Christine transformed how I thought about my business. But as you've seen today, all of our experts have done that. So you know, Tim and Hayley have done it on finance, and Rebecca's done it on big people, and Mark's done it on process. So so a big thank you to them for their contribution. Nita, thank you for helping to well, thank you for making this work beautifully and for getting us here today, and thank you all for joining in. That's where you can register, or if you just want to feedback or ask me anything, just drop me a line. My contact details are on the Locating Kent website.